Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix, back on the case again. How are you? Welcome to another day of unfoldment in the madness, in the circus, in the ongoing tortured theater of the mind, in this so-called thing that we have agreed upon to be reality. And we're going to get into it today. I'm going to give you a lot of updates as to what's going on in mask world, and I'm going to get into the Ghislaine Maxwell uh, plea, whatever that thing was. We're going to try to go down that rabbit hole a little bit and try to unearth what I think is happening there. Also, we're going to get into, for all intents and purposes, what I call the weaponization of humanity. And essentially, what's taken place is that people from various groups have been weaponized. They've been radicalized and weaponized, and this is part of our reality now. Okay, the United States has been turned into basically a third world country in about 6 months. It all happened very, very quickly. If you are familiar with places like Brazil, uh, and other parts of South America, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's happened very, very rapidly, and something to be concerned about. To be honest with you, okay, that doesn't mean that we're not at a nexus point and that we can change. We can change what's going on. By the way, but in order to change it, you have to be committed to the change. You have to be committed to the change as much or more than the change that the so-called other side is committed to. Okay, you got to remember that now. We're dealing with a group of people, and when I say group of people, I'm talking from corporate on down to uh, rioters on the streets, looters on the streets, protesters on the streets, murderers on the streets, thieves on the streets. Like there's a certain level of commitment there. Whether or not they understand that their level of commitment ultimately has to involve their body as well. I mean, this is what we're talking about here. Like, how committed really are you to some form of truth or change? If you sat down and talked to some so-called protesters in a place like Portland, are they willing to lose their lives? Some might say yes. Others might, if you really put a gun to their head and said, "Are you willing to lose your life for the type of world that you believe this to be more fair and just?" That'd be an interesting conversation to have. And I would say, when push came to shove, probably about 80% of them would say no. Okay. There are other people who really don't have a whole lot of investment in human life, apparently. And when they display this, they're basically saying, "Yeah, I will risk my life. I will risk my life because I really don't have any understanding about sort of the sanctity and the sacredness of life itself." Maybe they were raised in an environment that was harsh. Maybe there is programming. Maybe there is sort of a group think where this idea that nothing really matters, nothing really counts. It almost moves into kind of this, existentialist territory. Hey, what's going on? Got a little buzzer going around me. I'm going to get into a little bit of that today, and we're going to try to explore some of that. And how do we deal with this? How do we work with these golems that have been unleashed in our society? And I use the word golem specifically because I had a really great interview with Craig Simpson from Radiant Creators yesterday. We spent about 2.5 hours, and I don't know when it's going to go live. I think maybe today or tomorrow. And it was really fantastic interview. Craig is a great host. If you haven't found Radiant Creators or Radiant Creations, their website, please check them out. Our friend Masaki was on there, and there's a gal. I haven't checked out her astrology stuff, but there's a gal that does astrology there. Craig himself is pretty proficient in astrology, so you may want to just go to their website in general, check out their podcasts, their streams. My show with Craig. I should be up in about a day or so. So definitely check that out. And one of the things that Craig brought up, which I thought was a really, really interesting sort of concept, is this idea of the golem or the golem, depending upon how you mention it or how you phrase it. And the idea here is that the golem is created out of earth, right? It's like a being that's created out of earth. And then it is animated by the rabbi, right? This comes out of the Jewish tradition. And the golem is set forth to take care of the so-called enemies of righteousness, right? This is what the golem is basically created for. And the golem will take care of business. Now, the golem has one emotion, just one emotion, it's anger. So if the golem is not engaged in the act of eliminating so-called the enemies of so-called righteousness, then it becomes this sort of possessed entity, which is dispossessed from its purpose. And that's when the trouble starts. It's like a golem without a purpose, with the main emotion being anger. Okay. So Craig and I talked about this, a really interesting concept. We talked about zombies as golems, and we also get into the idea of the egregore, which is this sort of, evil thought form, right? That kind of moves around like a dark cloud and descends upon people or groups or lands. So these are some really interesting concepts. And the one with that, again, we got into the most was the golem, which is a really, really interesting one. So we could look at this time that we're in now as golems that have been created. And we also talked about the orcs from the Lord of the Rings, and how the orcs were, essentially brought up out of the earth, right? Sauron, which is basically Saturn, right? Sauron brings up the orcs and does the bidding for the dark mage or the dark wizard. So it's a really interesting concept, and it kind of bleeds into the NPC, narrative that we've covered on the show. So we get into a lot of that, and it's a really interesting show. Go check it out. As soon as I get the link, I'll on the video, I'll actually put it on the channel, and check out his other stuff as well. I'm gonna try to get him on the show. Really great guy, totally great guy. And he apparently listens and watches the show as well, to this show. So again, thank you, Craig, and I hope that our worlds and our people and our groups can intermingle. And I swear he came up with a word, and I think the word was trive. I think that was the word, trive, Trive. I could be mistaken. Trive. And if he didn't come up with it, then he should. Because early on when I was doing my website, first iteration of my website, I came up with this idea of thrival, and which was being able to thrive in a time of survival. And it was just my idea. I was just playing with it, and some guy came in and hit me with a comment and said, "Oh, I wrote a book about this. That's my word." I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I didn't read your book. It was just something I thought up. We're on the same page. Let's get down to it. FUP77 in the house. Michael, DJ MC, what's happening? There's Leanne. Lisa Marie, I will call you today. Julie Sunshine 333. Kara McLaughlin. There's the lovely and talented Joan S. Christy Tesmer. Christine Mose. Lils, what's happening? Ian Barber. Justice Booty. Miranda Couch. Beverly Wise. Shanna Cross. We got another Joan W. Diana Young, Laura D. There's Uncle Glenn. What's going on, Uncle Glenn? He caught me over on Russ Winter's site, and I want to have Russ Winter on the show on a Friday. Winter Watch is a very powerful site. It's a very, very powerful site. Winterwatch.net. You may not agree with everything that Russ has to say, and you may find that Russ is spitting a lot of truth. I'm actually going to reference one of his articles today on Ghislaine Maxwell. There's Steve, Thor by the door, Natasha Lloyd. Where's Judy? Hello, Judy. Loren, Victoria V, Maury Demare, Shanna Mariam. There's Ani. What's going on, Ani? There's Faith, Joe Mama, 2 Joes in a row. Joe, what's happening, Joe Dimitri? Emerald V, Chris and Steve, Tamara Garth. Most of the soy boys are afraid of losing their phones, much less their lives. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Let's see, what do we else? Fifth Wall, Kestrel in the house, Marlene McNichols. Asheville City Council voted for reparations unanimously yesterday. Not exactly direct payments. So the reparations, let me talk about the reparations. Reparations are going to be used as the vehicle for the redistribution of wealth. Okay, this is what reparations is going to be used for, the redistribution of wealth. And it's going to be, what are they, something like 6 trillion, something like that. That's how they're going to pay for the reparations. This is going to be the social Marxists pushing their chips all in. This is going to be the vehicle for that. And essentially how that's going to work, I'll tell you right now, it's going to work. They're going to take all private property. They're going to take all the private property. I'm telling you that right now. They will take your private property, which means that you will no longer own your house. It'll become an object of the state, or the state will own your house. Okay, they'll own your house. They'll own your business, anything. You got anything in your bank account? Guess what? They're going to own that too. Okay, this is what's going to happen. This is how they're going to pay for it. They're not going to like say, oh, hey, the Rothschilds have a lot of fucking money. Why don't we have the Rothschilds pay for this? Why don't we do that? They could afford it. No. This is all part of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. This is the World Economic Forum leveling everything out. So they'll seize your property. Now, you may have an opportunity to keep your property. Maybe if you sign a Pledge of Allegiance to do certain things, right? If you get on your knee and do whatever you're supposed to do and say the right things and do the right things and pledge allegiance to, a new lord or new anti-lord, you might be able to keep your place. But we know how these people operate. We know how the game works, and you can do all that and they'll still kick you out of your house. Okay. So what happens then? Well, what happens after that is you're out. You're out. And guess what? Somebody will be in your house. They'll take your house. They'll put somebody else in your fucking house. That's what'll happen. And those people will get stipends. They'll get UBI. That's exactly what'll happen. It'll be part of their reparation. Okay, that's it. This is what's going to happen. So then you're going to be dispossessed and you're going to be out on the streets. Okay, you'll be out on the streets. And then what's going to happen? Well, if you're lucky, you might be able to apply for a new house. Okay, but I guarantee you it won't be anything like the house that you were in before. It'll be some shit shack. And that's just temporary because they got a whole other plan in place. That's going to happen. You might be able to apply for a new place and you will get the dregs. That's going to happen. This is how this whole thing will unfold. Now, for those people, and those are people that they'll accept in their new paradigm and in their new world. The ones that they won't accept, well, you got a whole other fate in store for you. Whole other fate. It's like the Cheka, it's like the camps. This is where we're headed. I'm just being straight up and honest, right? So when you have your mayors around the country who are now voting in favor of reparations, then this is where this is all going. It's about the redistribution of wealth, the absolute obliteration of private ownership. That's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. And people right now, people will just, go along. Okay. It's good for the country, whatever. I don't, whatever. I'll absolve my guilt. I'll absolve my shame. It's a very, very slippery ass slope. It is a slippery ass slope. And that's where the game is headed. Okay. So I'm being straight up. Cash right now is kind of an issue. Some places will not take cash anymore. There's a supposed coin shortage, which is a bunch of horse shit. They just shut down the mints. Said, we're not gonna mint any more coins. We're not gonna mint any more coins. So, you're on your own now. You gotta use your card where everything's gonna be trackable from this point forward. How fun is that gonna be? That's happening. That's happening at light speed. You can't use cash at the checkouts at Walmart now. I don't go to Walmart, but if I did go to Walmart, in this town, theoretically you got to wear a mask because, well, I might try this. But I have a plan. I've always got a plan with this shit. So I will. Yesterday I shopped at HEB, and I was the only person in HEB without a mask. It was bizarre. It was surreal, and there is a weird kind of power, I have to say, that comes along with that. Not that I'm going there to have some kind of a power trip, but it's a weird kind of power that you have. You look around and everybody's wearing a mask, and you're the only person not wearing a mask. I swear to God, not one person besides myself was maskless in that store. Not one. And I didn't get any shit. People they didn't give me any shit. I don't get any looks. And people, I go to the fish counter, order fish. People are nice. I have nice conversations with the people behind the fish counter. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Have a good day. Have a good day. Same thing when I check out. It's like it's never that part of the experience has never changed. And then but the people in the store, of course, that's changed because I'm in my own private Idaho and they're not. And it's a really interesting experience. And I talked with Craig about this, and it's like, let's say you were in a coma. And your coma started in, I don't know, the beginning of December in 2019. And you wake up out of your coma now and you walk around and you're like, what the fuck happened? What did I miss out on? It would be like a Twilight Zone episode, walking around with all these people with masks. And then the mask aggression is it's ratcheting up. Okay, I'm going to talk more about that. Let's get into the invocation. Dear blessed and holy Father, Mother God, of the great central sun, which is the universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel. We ask that only the highest and best information, wisdom, and truth come through this channel at this time, and that we are blessed with the qualities of grace, fortitude, perseverance, flexibility, compassion, intelligence, wisdom, strength, heart, empathy, humor, and most of all, humor. If there is any karmic residue that we share amongst one another, let it be clarified, purified, cleansed, and removed from us during this stream so that we may be able to re-enter our experience as sovereign entities. So be it. All right. So, yeah, the mask thing is ratcheting up. Rick Wiles' wife, Rick Wiles over at True News. I actually like True News. They do things at True News that are actually, how do I say it? They're ahead. They're steps ahead for a lot of reasons. Like the guys at True News were the first people to go to Jeffrey Epstein's New Mexico hangout. Like they went there. They went around with cameras. They were videotaping stuff. Like who else went there? Who else went there? Now, I know some people aren't into them for whatever reason, okay? That they would go to these economic forums, they would go to Indonesia, and they would look at the future of money and cryptocurrency and all that stuff. But they're just trying to stay on top of the game, try to find out where things go. They went to Davos, okay? They've been to Davos. They've hung out at Davos. They've reported there. They didn't hang out there. They were reporting there. So it's interesting the kind of the circles they travel in. But there's a recent piece there. They uncovered that the Pope has a house in New York City. And guess whose place was right next to the Pope's house? Jeffrey Epstein. So you can find stuff like that over on True News. Anyway, Rick Wiles' wife got hassled by some people at Publix in, I guess it's Vero Beach. I guess that's where they live. And she got hassled by the guy who worked there and by a customer. She got hassled. And there's a woman who's in one of those electric carts you go around the store in. It's like, it's bullshit. Then one of the guys said, oh, why don't you just get the hell out of here and go vote for Trump? You see how this whole thing has been atomized and polarized? It's really bad. Really, really, really bad. Really bad. And people are just playing into this thing. They're just playing into it. They're just I hate to say it, but most people are just obedient sheep. They just are. And they may justify whatever it is they're doing. They're thinking, I'll just put the mask on. It's kind of like the mask is another version of kneeling. I'll put the mask on, and at some point, by showing the ability to follow directions, instructions, be a good citizen, head this terrible, terrible virus off at the pass. But if I do this, enough people do this, it'll pass. We'll be patted on our backs. We'll be able to re-enter our lives, and we'll have a good feeling about participating in this collective event, redefining what a good American or a good citizen should be. And there are some people who have that mindset. There are other people who are adamant that the mask is going to be the thing that's going to save their lives, save other people's lives, because coronavirus is such a just deadly, and I mean deadly disease. Well, they found out here in Texas, by the way, that there are more flu deaths than there are coronavirus deaths. Okay, that's a fact, Jack. The flu deaths outweigh the coronavirus deaths. And now Greg Abbott here in the state is basically saying, if everybody wears a mask, we won't have to have a lockdown. So he's psychologically forcing people to wear this mask. And he's also psychologically forcing people who wear the mask to put pressure on the people that don't wear a mask. So if you're not wearing a mask, you're gonna have the mask wearer say, you better wear a fucking mask, because if you don't wear a mask, we're gonna be locked down. Yeah, and so it's like throwing a big net out into the ocean and just getting a bunch of different fish, right? So the first maskers are the people who just normally just do it, right? They're just going to do it, whatever reason. They're just going to do it because they're being told what to do. Maybe it's politically in their wheelhouse, and they understand that if Donald Trump is anti-mask, that they want to be pro-mask, right? Again, polarization, atomization. And then there's the next level. Then, because there was that time, right? There was mask optional. There was that time. And so I would see people mask, no mask. And it's like, oh, okay. There's some people that are kind of thinking for themselves, right? But those people got converted very quickly, very, very quickly. And now, like I said, at HEB, it's 99.9% mask saturation. And it's a bizarre feeling walking in that store, being the only person without a mask. And it's really a shame, because it cuts off the human experience. We don't get to see the full face of a person. The mask changes the psychology of the individual. It's really a shame. It's a total shame. And it's a sham. It's a shame and a sham. It's a twofer. You get 2 for 1. So, yeah, that's happening. And they're ratcheting this thing up. And really what they want is they want entire mask coverage all across the United States. A friend of mine here in town who is an acupuncturist went to Wyoming, and Wyoming, just as bad as California in a lot of ways. And she reported to me that there were people on the trails hiking in Wyoming, 90-degree heat, and they're wearing a stupid fucking mask. It's like, you got to be kidding me. That's just got to be dangerous. It just has to be we know it's dangerous. You're getting less oxygen, you're getting more CO2, you're exerting your body. I mean, this is nuts. This is really nuts. It's like we have been thrown into this like wicked Skinner box experiment. It's just absolutely nuts. And if you think people are going to flat out reject the vaccine, think again. Think again. Because what I'm seeing out there with all the mask saturation, they're programming people to take the vaccine. They're programming people to give away their consent. Right? They're consenting. And once you begin to get on the slippery slope of that consent, it's just like, well, I may as well consent to that and to that and to that. You want to take my house? Go ahead and take my house. Oh, yeah. Just take it all. Oh, yeah. You want me to go over, get on that bus and go to that camp? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, all right. It blows my mind. It just blows my mind. And, I know people that are not consenting. Okay. But they are theoretically a minority. They're a minority. It's so weird. Like, you have to wear a mask now to just blend in and not be hassled or not be excoriated for not wearing a mask. And when it comes down to this, thing where if we all wear masks, we have to shut down. I mean, that's pressure. That's intense pressure that's being applied. Interesting times. Let's kind of get into some like bizarre stuff. So I've talked about fashion, and I've talked about how fashion brings trends. That this is the new sort of the new cutting edge territory. So it used to be music, and music and fashion were synonymous. You know, there were musical styles, and there were generally fashions that went along with the musical styles. You know, you had disco. In disco, you had, you know, flared pants. You had the elevator shoes, a lot of polyester. Yep, that was the fashion. Uh, that was the uniform, right? The fashion statement for disco, punk rock, 180. Things are torn, safety pins. You know, thrift store, hot couture, right? That's what punk rock was about. There was a fashion there. Glam had a fashion. You know, glam was glam, and you know there was makeup and hair and another fashion statement. So music has been connected to fashion. If you go to Porter Wagner and his suits, you know Porter Wagner's suits, there was it was the kind of like the rhinestone cowboy look. Again, all about fashion, rockabilly, pompadours, blue jeans, t-shirts, music and fashion, hand in glove, hand in glove, hand in glove. Well, now music isn't really music anymore. I'm going to talk about music today. It's going to be a good part of the show. It's going to be a really, I think, fun little segment here at the end. So now music is gone. Sports became an area where now there was this intersection between fashion and sports. And I swear to God, I mean, the last couple of years, they would have the cameras on guys walking into the locker room, and it was like a red carpet. And they use that opportunity to promote their fashion lines, their brand, or whatever. The most notorious being Russell Westbrook, who plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he's a total fashionista. Cam Newton, fashionista. So this idea of fashion, then kind of once music started to peter out, the idea of fashion moved into sports because sports could then be this intersection between fashion and this other activity, right? Well, now sports is over. It's just pure fashion now. Fashion has become this entity that inserts trends, memes, tropes into our consciousness. So I'm going to show you something. It's interesting but disturbing at the same time. So you got to check this out. And again, it's kind of an interface between music and fashion to some extent, although this is not anything connected to a genre or a movement or any. Well, it is a movement, but not a genre. Okay, so this is the Instagram page of Erica Badu. Okay, here we go. Hazmat Couture. I guess she's in Austin. What's going on, Erica Badu in Austin? Look at that. Is that a statement? Is that a statement or is that an insert, a cultural insert for people to get ready for full on hazmat fashion or full on hazmat attire? You think that that's impossible? You think that that's silly? It may be silly. It's certainly not impossible. If I said to you 6 months ago that everybody in the United States would be walking around wearing masks, and you couldn't get buy a bicycle in a land where bicycles have been plentiful, you would think that I was nuts. This may not look so nuts in about 3 to 4 months. Now, there are companies who are piggybacking on this idea of the personal hazmat experience. Let me show you where this is headed. It's your own personal biosuit, right? Personal protective gear that actually works, adapting to a new normal. Get yours. There we go. The BioVisor, a personal air purifying shield for everyday protection against pollutants, allergens, and pathogens. Look at this. This is your future right here. This is your future. It's a proprietary design that provides 360 degrees of protection and shields on all sides. You hook it in and you strap it up. The only thing that's missing here is like a Kevlar vest. Let's put a Kevlar vest on there as well and make this maybe bulletproof. And there, now we're talking. And make this a bulletproof shell. And then here we have this this cuck, this fashion cuck, doing his best to project intensity, some weird form of masculinity. Yes, I'm a man, and I'm not afraid to wear the visor. And I have facial hair too, just to prove it. But I do wear these silly sneakers. Eliminates face touching. Reduces spreading risk, shields your face, and filters your air. Oh, what a happy face. There you go. Let's talk about how our biovisors can help your business get back on track. Oh, look at this. Solutions for industry, for businesses. Here we go. There's a little video that goes along with it. I mean, this is like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Jesus Christ. And it looks good too when you pair it up against that nice teal shirt there. Oh, look at that. Here's the cutaway. The positive pressure constantly pushes the air out. Tighter side buckles make a better seal. And the air seal is a battery-powered motor fan. It pushes air into the biovisor, creating positive pressure. The positive pressure pushes out exhaled hair inside through to filtering air vents. Oh boy, oh boy. Isn't that just cool? Isn't that cool? Who's going to be the first celebrity to sport one of these things? All these trendy publications and websites have apparently featured the BioVisor. This is 1.0. What's the pre-order look like? How much do these things cost? Let's see. Let's find out. Come on now. Show us the money. Show us the price tag. Give it up. All right, here we go. This is an Indiegogo campaign, apparently. Okay. So how much do you have to pay? How much you got to pay? Let's find, what is it? What's the price? So the filters are $76. Singles pack, $340. Doubles pack, those are just for the filters, okay? How much is the mask? Oh, there we go. Extended family pack times 10, $3,400. Is that Canadian? Is that what the CAD is? Is this the Canadians' contribution to the crisis? Well, how much is the damn thing? So the organization pack, 16,000. 16,000 Canadian. Oh my God. Heaven help us. Oh, look, you could even check your cell phone. I'm surprised that they don't have like a pocket right here in front, so you can just stick your cell phone right in the pocket. Its futuristic patent pending design physically shields you from airborne pathogens, allergens, and pollutants. Oh, it's got the hanging loop. Look at that. Look, here's what I will say about this thing. If there was a real super duper pandemic bio warfare event, like this thing could actually come in handy, I think. Well, they got children's sizes too. Get them one for your kids. Send them off to school. I want to. I'd love to see a family outing with people with the biovisor going out, going to the park, playing frisbee. Get the peripheral side window there. That's very important. You keep talking about the hanging loop. I guess that's how you can hang the biovisor up when you're not using it. There's the fan powered oxygen circulator. It's like we're living on another planet. It's like we're aliens on our own planet. This is, my God. It goes on and on and on. Particulate filter. Those are the filters. Those are the big money items there. Cleaning and care. Ooh, they have recommended cleaning. I bet you could buy those from them too. We must protect ourselves better, adopt new hygiene practices, and make decisions that protect the vulnerable. Oh, you see that now? Now we have to protect the people that are vulnerable. You're like, who's vulnerable, really? If they're vulnerable, why aren't they quarantined? Right? Why aren't they quarantined? If people are sick, why aren't they quarantined? Who we made this for? Healthcare professionals, schools and universities, customer facing roles, travel and hospitality. Can you imagine a stewardess, a flight attendant walking down the aisle with one of these things? Public transport, public service employees, events and conferences. Could you imagine 500 people with a biovisor? Oh my God, we are living in bizarro world, man. We're living in bizarro world. Jeez, you get everything. Look at that. Power packs, reversible gloves, motor testing. They get serious motor testing, airflow testing. Look at that. Every unit airflow tested. Oh my God. Yeah, we're aliens on our own world now. Think about that. This is crazy. I'm still trying to figure out how much it costs. We know what the filters are. How much is the damn mask? Breathe easier. How much is the mask? I don't see how much the mask is or the helmet is. So they've raised $525,000 by 524 backers. That's USD. Oh, it's an in-demand product. How about that? I still don't know how much this is. I don't know how much it is. But we do know how much the masks are or the filters are right there. Right there. Mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing. What do you guys think of that? What do you think of the fully enclosed environmental solution to the coronavirus crisis that we're in? What do you think of that? Are you guys going to run out and buy one? The whole thing is just utterly bizarre. Utterly bizarre. $526. I think it's more than that. What do we have here? There is no price. It's going to be pricey as fuck. Yeah, I don't think there is a price. It reminds me of the children's book, The Last Mimsy, where people had to dress like that because their DNA was compromised. So they sent a toy back in time to get pure DNA. Can I get it in tie-dye colors? Joe, I think you might have found kind of an aftermarket add-on there that you might actually be able to, reach out to the company and say, hey, I really am connected to the tie-dye community. And, I think I could really work with you on some great tie-dye designs. So, when these people want to go see a Fish concert, we can put these on and they'll look great. They'll have their tie-dye visors on. Joe, I think there's a future there for you with that. Okay. I think Robert said the next thing they would find a connection to disease in your pets, stripping us of those too. Yeah, the pet thing is they've been talking about that for a while, and they said it was just cats that could supposedly get corona. Now supposedly dogs could get corona too. So yeah, they want to take away our familiars. They want to just strip everything away from us. They'll give you a little carrot every now and then. Oh, here you go, have this. Then they'll hit you again, right? It's really a very very sophisticated and very effective program that they're using to get people to completely and utterly disassemble their will. Has anyone worn panties with the crotch over their nose yet? No, but I've threatened to. I've threatened to wear a G-string around my face. Maybe I'll save that for Walmart. Yeah, maybe I'll save that. Connection to bubonic plague. Oh, Shauna said yes, like 2 months ago. Shauna, what was it like to wear your panties over your face in a store? What kind of looks did you get? How well can people hear each other? Are saying with the biovisor and no kissing either. I think that's kind of the point, Claire. I don't know about the hearing part, but I know the no kissing part is a big part of it. Big part of it. Absolutely. Dawn says, I sleep with dogs and cats every night and not dead yet. Yeah. A lot of this is projection and fear and making sure that people just live in a place from their first chakra. That's it, man. They just want to take you right down to your first chakra. They don't want you living up here. They don't want you living up here. They don't want you living up here. And they don't want you living up here. That's what it's all about. Let's just take them right down to their first chakra. And let's get them some really nice toys so we elevate their first chakra experience. That's it. Faith says, got my hair done yesterday. They covered my face with a towel while being shampooed. It was a trip. I bet it was. I bet it was. Let's see. Bubonic plague discovered in Morrison County in Colorado near Denver. Yeah. Let's resurrect the past. Let's resurrect the past. Let's roll out another deadly plague and pathogen, so they're just going to roll out the greatest hits. They'll roll out the greatest hits. After that, we'll have let's see, we'll have the Spanish flu, we'll have typhoid, all the greatest hits of the disease canon will just be rolled out. Remember those KTEL commercials? What was it like? 16 sunshine power hits, and they would give you like about a 15-second snippet of a song, and they would have the name of the artist that would roll by. Remember those commercials? They could do another one for famous plagues from the past. It's the Famous Plagues Greatest Hits album. Let's go back in time and celebrate some of the great plagues in history. Remember this one? The bubonic plague, also known as the Black Plague. And then they could have some song. This is it. It's like the KTEL of disease. That's where we are right now. All right. It is not just the so-called pathogens that are floating around. There is a mind virus that's taking place as well. And we've talked about this. And that mind virus has been sort of omnidirectional, not omnipresent, but omnidirectional, and seeping into other parts of our society, unfortunately. Unfortunately. What do I want to do here? Let me see. Let me show you this. Okay. So the hip, trendy, semi-religious, guilt-relieving thing to do in the early days of the revolution, post George Floyd, was for people to Take a knee. This was especially prevalent in the so-called law enforcement community, where police chiefs, police officers did the Macarena, took a knee, marched arm in arm in solidarity with Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all the protesters. Well, guess what? That does not guarantee you immunity. Does not guarantee you immunity. I'm going to show you a little story here, which actually supports what I'm sharing with you here. This is different. I'm going to show you this one. That's not the one I want to show you. That's the different one, and I'm going to talk about that. That's brutal, and you know, I'm sorry. I do have to show it because it does relate to the time that we're in. If you don't understand this, and you're living in denial. All right, so I'm going to show you this one first, then I'll get back to that one. And where is it? Here it is. When are people going to learn? NYPD chief who knelt with protesters ends up violently assaulted by the mob. There's a lesson, probably a lesson in here somewhere. Now we're getting images of Trump with his mask. Isn't that interesting? No comment. NYPD Chief Department Terrence Monahan, the highest ranking uniformed officer on the force, was violently assaulted today during a protest on the Brooklyn Bridge. This occurred in conjunction with two other officers suffering injury. One of the attacks was caught on video. I don't know if I can actually play this video. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Oh, there they are. Here comes the mob. They just descend, don't they? It's amazing. It's amazing how quickly they're just mobilized and they move in. And everybody wants a pound. Everybody wants a pound of flesh. Everybody gets a shot in. So Terrence Monahan is somewhere in there. The city's top uniformed cop was injured when he was attacked by a group of people who are at George Floyd protests on the Brooklyn Bridge on Wednesday. Are we going to continue to be protesting George Floyd for the rest of the year? This is a question. Chief of Department Terrence Monahan received non-life-threatening injuries during the scuffle. Isn't that an interesting use of language? He suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Oh, okay. So what, did he break a wrist? Broken ribs, cracked ribs? Did he lacerate a kidney? You know, you can lacerate your kidney. Depends on how you determine and define life-threatening. Did his jaw get fractured? I wouldn't consider that non-life. You see how they just like they put a little fluffy pillow around the language. You may remember Monahan from his previous media coverage. He was notably filmed taking a knee with protesters. Oh, let's see how Officer Monahan performed his duties as an ambassador from the world of law enforcement. There he is. There he is. They're all happy there, aren't they? Happy days. Standing knee on knee in solidarity. And what did that get you? What did that get you? Yeah. It got you an ass whooping. That's what it got you. That's exactly what it got you. The attempts to appease protesters have yielded little results in these cities. Gee, I wonder why. The assault on Monahan is just the latest piece of evidence on that front. For every protester you may get on your side, even temporarily, there's always someone else. What do we have here? Oh, come on. Go back. I don't want here. Stop. Don't hijack my experience. There's always someone else. What do we have here? So this is what happened. Yeah, apparently that's non-life threatening. Oh, and look, he's even wearing a mask. That's okay. It's just a flesh wound. It'll heal. Don't worry about it. You have insurance. You probably have a good insurance program. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Just put a little dirt on and get back out there. The attempts to appease protesters have yielded little results in these cities. The assault on Monahan is just the latest piece of evidence on that front. For every protester you may get on your side, even temporarily, there's always someone else looking to cause unrest and violence. Police are not going to retake control of these cities by straddling the line between enforcing law and promoting their own quasi brand of wokeness. Okay. This is what happens. This is what happens. Maybe he should have had something identifying himself, right? Maybe he should have, I've had like a t-shirt made, right? But maybe he should have had a t-shirt made with the image of him kneeling down. Maybe he should have that. And maybe he should, or just a shirt that says I kneeled, right? I kneeled. Or maybe he should have a shirt that says just ask me to kneel. Maybe that would be good. I kneeled, just ask me to kneel again. Right? He goes into that situation, hands up. I kneel, just ask me to kneel again. Then maybe you could have a little picture of him kneeling so that they remember that, oh, yeah, you were the dumbass that kneeled. Yeah, sorry, dumbass. That's not going to work this time. Right? It's not going to work. Ani has a good comment here. I'm going to bring it up. It is a prison and we forgot how to break out, but we're remembering. Certainly feels like it. Certainly feels like they decided, okay, end of the free range society. We're closing the gates now. You're locked in. And I think there's some truth to that. So the violence continues, unfortunately, and it's something that the media does not talk about. I am going to talk about it here today because I think we need to talk about it. You won't get it on the mainstream media, and this is and again, this is tragic on so many levels. All right. So we have this character. His name is Henry Washington, if I'm not mistaken. Right. This is in Washington State, by the way. Bothell, which is outside of Seattle. Okay. So here we go. Big league politics. BLM supporter arrested for killing a police officer as his mother posts about the crime on Facebook. Now, I'm actually surfacing this story for a number of reasons. Number one, we have opened, or a Pandora's box has been opened, and it has not been closed. And I do place some blame on Trump's shoulders here, because there are numerous technologies that they could roll out, and they could have rolled out at any point during these protests. And I've talked about them before. The LRADs, the MRAPs, water cannons. They could have put this stuff down within 24 hours, and they didn't do it. And this idea that they were going to let the states do it is, take care of their business, is just freaking suicide. It's the suicide of the union. And what happened as a result of this is that a whole group of people just got a lot of permission to continue to not only do what was being done during that time, but to amplify what took place. It's an amplification through permission. They were being given consent to not just protest or let's use the word loot and rob, because that's exactly what happened. But there's been this kind of permission that's been given for people to become violent and become weaponized. And by the way, the violence, this is an extreme version of this. There's another form of violence. If you're not wearing a mask and somebody turns on you and starts, raking over the coals for not wearing a mask, it is a form of violence. Now, it's not an extreme form of violence like this, but it's psychologically violent. So what's happened is that because they did not put a cap on what occurred post George Floyd, they've opened the Pandora's box. And this is what we're dealing with now. So this guy apparently, I think he killed a cop. He killed a cop in Washington. He's from Arizona. He was, who knows, maybe he was up in Seattle, but he killed a cop. And then his mother posts on Facebook in shock, "My son killed a police officer and wounded another, asking for prayer." The mother posts on Facebook that her son killed a police officer. Well, there goes his trial, or maybe not. So here you go. I think this is him, if I'm not mistaken. Wielding a firearm in an unsafe fashion. Oh, that's him. This is a machete. So this is the young man. This is brutal. This is the brutality of the times that we're living in. And it's the deep, hardcore polarization that's set in. And it's tragic. It's sad, and it's infuriating. Absolutely infuriating. And one of the things that I talked with Craig Simpson about yesterday is, what can we do? Right? What can we do in the face of all this? And we had a really good discussion in regards to those kinds of terms and those ideas. And a lot of it has to do with what I talk about here, is to remember that you're human, right? That in a lot of ways, you cannot allow external reality to define who you are. You just can't. We talk about this being the time of the individual, and it is the time of the individual. It is the time of the individual where the inner directed manifestation of the Logos, or this thing that connects each and every one of us in each and everything in this planet, emerges through us, where it becomes a sovereign experience where you take authority over your own life. And that's in every single aspect, including how you feel. And we talked about this, and you'll hear it on the interview. And what he says is that, I remember how life was so sweet, right? This goes back to my conversation yesterday about kind of where we are now. And his sort of prescription for dealing with this was like, remember what it was like to just be able to go to the dog park with your dog and talk to other people and just have a very simple kind of, experience and pleasure, and to take that and to move that forward and to have that in your heart, that's something that can never take away from you. All right. And there's a lot of truth to that, right? That's remembering, who you are. That's remembering what's important. That's remembering what's vital. That's remembering what's sacred. We have to hold on to those things. We do. It's important. We cannot let them be stripped from our lives. When that happens, we become less than human, and they theoretically have won. Okay. They've won. So sometimes I will show you things that are graphic. Sometimes I will show you things that might push your buttons a bit. They're not I'm not showing them or bringing them up so that I can create more division, more strife, more polarity. I am showing you that this is what's happening in the world. And if you don't understand what's happening in the world, if you can't see what's going on, then you're going to be blindsided, okay? Blindsided. So the way that we stand up to this is you retain your humanity and you express your divinity. Okay. And that whole other thing that we just talked about, that I just showed you, there's a whole like, how do I say this, archaeology that goes along with that moment. Like, how did those young men get to that moment? What were the social forces that conspired to drive them into that moment? How were they raised? What were the influences? And it's not just them. Go back to those guys in Portland who were running around trying to, figure out whose cell phone that was on the side of the ground, yelling and screaming, he's got arrows in the back of his car. It's like, how were they raised? What were the social conditions that created that kind of egregore or that kind of mindset? These are really big questions. They're very big questions. And I don't think we have the opportunity right now to solve those big questions. We're talking a much longer kind of cycle or time in order for us to sort of reshape and rebuild a different moral character, a different kind of communal response. This is not something that's going to be solved overnight. So right now, and I will say this, that we're in part of our experience is about survival. We got to be able to get through this time, so we can get to the other side, because there is going to be there's going to be something on the other side of this. Trust me. How we interact, how we participate, how we communicate, how we share our thoughts will determine or help determine what that other side looks like. Okay, so just remember that, and you are not powerless. You are not powerless at all. This is an important thing to wrap your head around. Okay, I got a rip here. I got to do a few things. I got a client at the top of the hour. Let me just show you quickly. I'm going to tap into Russ Winter's site, Winter Watch, because he's got a great article here. Let me see if I can find this thing. He's got a great article here on Ghislaine Maxwell. So this is updates on the Star Chamber case of Ghislaine Maxwell and the Poway Synagogue Rabbi's Donation Fund. So there are two stories here. One has to do with Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, the weird thing about Maxwell is that the people who were supposedly there and able to witness her arraignment didn't even see Ghislaine Maxwell. What they saw was an artist rendering on video that the judge was addressing. They weren't even able to see the so-called Ghislaine Maxwell. And I don't even know if this is her. This doesn't look like her at all. So Russ Winter says swarthy Moldovan doppelganger, a Vulcan perhaps. Jane Rosenberg was the court-appointed artist here. This does not look like Ghislaine Maxwell at all. Hard features. She never pulled her hair back. This is somebody who has their hair pulled back. This is not her hairstyle at all. So I think the fix is in. This is what it feels like. This is an interesting piece of information here. He calls her Jizz. Among Jizz's four-person legal team is Christian Everdell, a former New York prosecutor who now works for the New York firm Cohen and Gesser. Everdell led the legal team to help bring down the Sinaloa drug kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in federal court in New York. Fox Business News reports, what a fitting choice. In prosecuting El Chapo, Everdell would have had to have walked a fine line so as not to implicate the CIA and U.S. officials in narcotics trafficking, which I believe is true. So they get into some of the details. There she is. There's the Jizz that we're aware of. Right, this is the jizz that we become accustomed to, and this is what they're giving us. Really, really. Look at the eyes; they're very, very different. Her eyes are turned down. These eyes look up. There's a looking up. You see, it's different. Very, very different. Interesting. So, a rather absurd story of how Maxwell bought the New Hampshire tucked away estate emerged Tuesday. Prosecutor Allison Moe of the Southern District of New York told the court that Maxwell bought the property while pretending to be a journalist, British journalist called Janet Marshall. Moe added that she viewed the property with a British man who called himself Scott Marshall and claimed to be an ex-soldier working on a book. Interesting. Interesting name, right? Marshall, like martial law. This is so bizarre. And if you look at the charges against her, none of the things that we have become known and accustomed to about the dirty, seamy, secret underbelly of Ghislaine Maxwell and the grooming of young women and the supposed raping of young women and all the things that we know about, none of those charges come up. None of them. Basically, what the charges are I think it's like moving minors across a state line. That's what the charges are. That's it. It's like only one set of charges. One set of charges. There's nothing in there about larceny, blackmail, extortion, all the things that we know and are attributable to both her, Jeffrey Epstein, Les Wexner, and the entire operation. None of it's in there. And the charges only exist for a certain period of time. If I'm not mistaken, they're between 1992 and 1995, and that's the period apparently where Maxwell and Epstein are photographed with Donald Trump. That's kind of the nexus point of their connection. Those years, nothing beyond those years, nothing before those years. Also, keep in mind that James Comey's daughter is in this district. She's in this district, right? For the Southern Court, Southern District of New York. So the fix here is, I think, completely in. I think we're looking at another version of Jeffrey Epstein, although I don't think she'll be suicided. They'll have some kangaroo court, and maybe, just maybe, there'll be some kind of allegation. We'll never see her, by the way. We will never see her in a court. We haven't seen any mugshots or her arrest. Normally see those. Even the fake cop killer in Minnesota had a mugshot. You won't see those, though. What we'll see is the artist rendering of the court case. And I think this goes state by state, apparently. Like New York, I think, just changed their law on this. I think New York essentially killed the ability to be able to videotape or photograph. And recently, by the way. Gee, I wonder why. So I think the fix is in here. Now, there's other stuff going on that's really interesting. Chrissy Teigen pulled her Twitter account yesterday, 6,000 tweets. Pulled her Twitter account. Because in another area, the heat is actually on some of these people. Doesn't seem to be on these people from the powers that be, which is interesting, but not unsurprising. Because the powers that be simply want to run this thing out there and make it an open and shut case, and they'll use Ghislaine Maxwell, whoever this person is, to target somebody specific, use that for leverage, or actually go after that person. And I think in this instance, that person is Donald Trump. But that doesn't mean that chaos is in the system. It is in the system. And these things can go sideways very, very quickly. Very quickly. And I'm not even talking about this case. This Chrissy Teigen thing is nuts. Totally nuts. Somebody went after her about the Pizzagate stuff. She didn't defend herself. She took her whole Twitter account down. Does that tell you something? It should. The other story here is this rabbi, Yisrael Goldstein. Now, this takes us back to the shooting at the Chabad Center in Poway. Now, apparently, he's the guy that lost his fingers, right? He went to the White House. There's better times and better days with old John Bolton and Donald Trump. Better times, better days. So he actually led the prayer on the National Prayer Day. You know, how could people say that Trump is anti-Semitic? He is not anti-Semitic at all. So disabuse yourself of that notion. But, you know, he lost his fingers apparently. Now, what happened here is that Rabbi Goldstein was basically soaking money out of Chabad. So it is stated that Goldstein lost a finger, blah, blah, blah. Goldstein, who founded Chabad Poway near San Diego in 1986, collected $6.2 million in fake donations to the synagogue and affiliates and returned 90% to contributors with phony receipts, allowing them to deduct the full amount from their taxes. So it's kind of a Ponzi scheme. Goldstein kept the remaining 10% or more than $600,000 for himself, which is a token fee for running the wreck. You know who used to do this? Lenny Bruce used to do this. I read Lenny Bruce's autobiography called How to Talk Dirty and Influence People. So there's a story in there about how Lenny Bruce stole a priest's, Catholic priest's collar, garments, whole nine. He figured it out. Okay. Lenny Bruce figured this thing out. And he found a dry cleaners that did the business for the Catholic Church. And he somehow stole like this whole sort of, you know, Catholic Church, you know, collar, shirt, jacket, the whole 9 yards. And then what he did is he went door to door soliciting money and contributions for a leper colony. I shit you not, he did this. And he would actually keep some of the money for himself. And he did send some of the money to the leper colony. So like there was a leper colony. He kept some of the money for himself. It's the same thing. Look it up. I'm not lying. All right. So here we go. Goldstein acknowledged disguising a fake donation of more than $1.1 million in late 2017 by purchasing $1 million in gold coins and giving them to the phony donor. We call this the 90-10 tax fraud scheme. Goldstein acknowledged defrauding 3 unnamed Fortune 500 companies of $134,000 for matching employee donations. Employees deducted fake donations from their taxes, and Goldstein kept the corporate donations for himself. Okay, so this is, I think, an interesting story, not necessarily because he scammed the people in his temple or his community or scammed the people that were donating. I think it's an interesting story because it brings up the whole situation with Chabad. That's why I think it's interesting. And yeah, you can draw any kind of conclusions you want about that. So, you know, let's revisit that. We had John Earnest, who went in and supposedly shot up the synagogue in San Diego, in Poway. And remember, I kind of did a deep dive on this and found some very interesting poems. The Aurora shooter were from the very same town, Rancho Penasquitos. And Rancho Penasquitos is really just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Poway. They're in the same town, from the same town. What are the odds on that? And I even got into some similarities between John Earnest's father and James Holmes' father, who's a professor at Stanford, by the way. So that was, you know, that was a big time rabbit hole. The other thing that brought up is I remember there being connections between David Hogg, Emma Gonzalez, the Hogg family, and Emma Gonzalez's mother. And there's a San Diego connection. there. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Rancho Santa Fe, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Now that led me into some rabbit holes last night where I went into so Emma Gonzalez's mother, her name is Beth. So her married name is Beth Gonzalez, but her maiden name is Wiegand, Wiegan D, Wiegand. And I looked at her background. Her father was an admiral in the Navy. So Beth Wiegand was born and raised around Virginia, where of course that's where the Navy's located. Her father was kind of a big deal naval commander. Okay. And then after her father retired, he went into the defense industry, as a contractor, which is essentially what David Hogg's father did. David Hogg's father, FBI. And what did he do? He went into that company, was it Simulated Systems or whatever, right? Which is, again, a company that contracts out to the DoD. And I thought that's really interesting. That is really, really interesting that the mother of Emma Gonzalez, her father, this is like the Jim Morrison story. You know how Jim Morrison's father, Douglas Morrison, was an admiral, Gulf of Tonkin. He's the guy that helped sell the Vietnam War, Douglas Morrison. And again, they're from Virginia. Jim Morrison is from Virginia. He went to nursery school with Gail Sloatman. Gail Sloatman wound up marrying Frank Zappa. There you go. Connect the dots there, kids. All right, real quick, because I got to grow. I got to go do a client, but I want to take you back in time. And this is really what I want to leave the show with. And this gives you an idea and an understanding about who we were at a certain point in time, right? Who we were, how we experienced our lives in terms of being together, living amongst one another, right? Playing music, because I'm going to take you through the time machine into the memory hole, and I'm going to take you, and not that far away, even not that far back. So I want to show you a time where people, not just blacks, not just whites, right? People, men, women, got together and made some of the most incredible music that the world has ever known. Okay. So here we go. It's a little time travel. And I want to, and you know what? There's some really interesting things that I found when I did this, because I'm going to show you a number of pictures here that have to do with, bands that are multiracial or multi-ethnic or multi-sex, whatever. This is the sort of the not the thesis, but this is the intent for me showing you these pictures, because there are kids now that don't even understand that this stuff happened. Like their event horizon in the rearview mirror probably goes to about 2013 max. Okay, so there's a whole other world that these kids and people just don't know about. And for those of you that do know about it, and you're essentially supporting something that doesn't support this unity, shame on you. Shame on you. All right, let's get going. So this is the first image I want to pop in here. And I'm not gonna do a whole dissertation on the bands. I'd like to, but I'm just going to show you some images. Here we go. Southern Rock. That's the Allman Brothers. That's the Allman Brothers. This is post Greg Allman and Dickie Betts looking, and Greg Allman looking. So this is post Dwayne Allman, Dickie Betts, Greg Allman looking totally fucking wasted. But here we go. Right? Here we go. Everybody got along. Everybody made beautiful music. Everybody went to the concerts. And everybody had a very good time. A very good time. All right, let's see who else we got. Southern Rock. One of my favorite artists, although of course he's tainted just like everybody else, is David Bowie. David Bowie was not afraid to employ musicians. He came from a different background, different culture, different race. Here we have George Murray on bass, the amazing Carlos Alomar on guitar. You can't see who's drumming, but that's Dennis Davis in the background. Making great music, having a very, very good time, an image and a vision of unity. Now, Bowie's had a really interesting performance where he's entirely coked out on the Dick Cavett show. I'm just going to share one of these images. So here he is, the Thin White Duke. He's totally coked out. He's playing Young Americans. Here in the background, we have Carlos Alomar. And look at the lineup of background singers. The fellow in the blue polyester suit is Luther Vandross, who would go from being a backup singer to a lead singer and somebody who was an amazing artist. It's not my thing, but he's an amazing artist, an amazing voice. Okay, so there you go. There's another version. I'm just going to try to rip through these. A band from the area that I grew up in, San Jose, California. And who do we have here? The Doobie Brothers. And look, they even have an old geezer. That's Michael McDonald. I think he had silver hair when he was like 40. There we go. Right? There we go. That's like the minute by minute version of the Doobie Brothers. They're all playing. They're all hanging out. They're all making music. Another vision of unity. A lot of these bands I'm going to show you come from kind of a specific period of time. But like I said, I'll have a few that aren't. And let's do this. Casey and the Sunshine Band. There we go. Now, I don't know about this guy. He's looking up over here to this guy saying, this motherfucker's going to take my job. No, look, these people are happy. They're happy. There's no strife there. There's no strife there. You could not make music if you're freaking unhappy. Like, look at that. These people get along. They love each other. You know, this is the America that I grew up in and knew. And this is the America that's being atomized. Okay. From Southern California, we have Lil George and Little Feat. Very underrated band, by the way. Very, very underrated band. There we go. These guys are happy. Yeah, look, bands are bands, and sometimes they snipe, and sometimes they're conflicts. But this version of the group stayed together for quite a while until Lil George kind of blew his brains out by doing too much cocaine. But again, see what I'm talking about? Right there, boom. I got more. I got plenty more. A more recent version of what I'm talking about is the amazing British group, Massive Attack. Put on one of the best concerts I've ever seen. There they are. Great band. Very, very underrated group. Very underrated group. It's mostly these three guys, whoever they bring along on tour with them. I've seen Horace Andy do a lot of singing with them. I'll tell you what's really interesting. It's very hard to find pictures of Miles Davis's band. And Miles is a giant and brilliant. and didn't care what skin color you had, didn't care how old you were, as long as you could play. So, and he had a lot of different versions of his band. So here we have Miles. We got Dave Holland on bass, a rare electric bass moment for Dave Holland, by the way. John McLaughlin, Ayrton Morera, and Jack DeJohnette. Jack DeJohnette, freaking genius, man. That guy is amazing. Totally amazing. Jazz is one of those uh, genres that really represents what I'm talking about. Okay, what about modern day funk? Right? What about modern day funk? Well, from Minneapolis, this is Prince's buddy, right here. What time is it? It's Morse Day and the time. Right? Here we go. Again, these guys are hanging out. They're making music. They're having fun. They're having a lot of fun. Vision of Unity. Isn't that Des Dickerson? I think that might be Des. I'm sure Ray would be able to tell me. Of course, I'm going to have a picture of Prince. Again, from my part of the world where I grew up. That's Santana. And Santana had a number of iterations. All of them involve people from, different races, different ethnic backgrounds, different experiences. This is a very interesting version. I believe this is the Woodstock version of Santana. Michael Shreve is probably around 19 years old there. And this character right there, that's Neil Schon, who would later go on to become the lead guitarist for Journey. Who else do we have? Who's this? Oh, I'm going to save that for later. Of course, probably one of the most famous groups from that era and from that time, and just creating incredibly positive music until I think he got too turned out on cocaine and started to create songs that were more dark and cynical. Sly and Family Stone. There we go. There we go. We got women. We got dudes. We got brothers, right? That's Larry Graham, by the way, over there. Larry's a badass bass player. Sly and Family Stone. Again, a vision of unity. Great music. We can make it if we try, right? Take you higher. I mean, come on. These were the songs that inspired a generation. And it wasn't about division, it was about unity. It was about unity. I'll show you another band from my part of the world. Right around the same era, coming from the East Bay. We're talking Tower Power. Boom. You see, this is when they actually had bands. What a concept that is, to even have a band. Here's Lenny Williams. I met Lenny one day. Nice guy. Super, super nice guy. Tower Power. Another underrated group. Bum City. All right, who else do we have? Now, I'm going to show you a picture of Frank Zappa. Now, I don't totally endorse Frank Zappa, by the way, because Frank Zappa is like caught up in all that Laurel Canyon shit. But I do want to show you a picture of his band. There's the Mothers of Invention. There's the amazing George Duke, one of the true musical geniuses. And what's this gal's name? She plays the vibraphone. Like Frank just wanted to play with great musicians. He didn't care if you're a woman. He didn't care if you're white. He didn't care if you're black. He just wanted to play with great musicians. I don't fully endorse Frank Zappa, but I do endorse this idea and this concept of unity, which was clearly on display. And people got along. They loved each other. Did they disagree at times? Sure they did. Absolutely. But we're humans. We're allowed to disagree. One of the most underrated bands, I think, of all time here, again, coming out of the jazz world, we have Weather Report. The amazingly talented Wayne Shorter, Peter Erskine, who is the drummer, Alex Acuna over here on percussion, Jaco Pastorius, one of the great musicians of all time, the inventor of the fretless bass, and Joe Zawinul, who is just an incredibly generous spirit. It's an incredibly generous spirit. And here we go. Same deal, right? Jaco, I believe, was the Czech, if I'm not mistaken. Had a very tragic end, unfortunately. Let's see, who else do we have here? A more recent version of what I'm referring to, right? Coming out of New York City. We have this version of the Talking Heads. Oh yeah, there's a lot of strife in that picture, isn't there? A lot of strife going on there. So if I'm not mistaken, this is this is Alex Weir, guitar player. Bernie Worrell. I think that's Bernie. I think that might be Steve Scales, percussionist. That's Dolette McDonald. Adrian Bellou sitting in with the heads there. Where did this world go? People don't understand. They have no sense of history. They have absolutely no sense of, how we lived at a certain point in time. And it's an absolute and utter travesty. It's a total travesty. It's very hard to find pictures of Prince, by the way, with his band. I had to search hard, long and far to get at least one good image of Prince in the Revolution. So Prince is part Sly Stone and part James Brown. That's what Prince is, and part Jimi Hendrix. And again, we've got the gals here who I think were lovers, weren't they? Wendy and Lisa, weren't they lovers? Sheila E.'s in the band, right? At some point, Sheila E. is, she's gay. You got some of the white boys there, Dr. Z, Bobby Z, right? Again, what are we seeing here? We're seeing an image of unity. Hey, Minneapolis, pay attention. This is what your world used to be like before you burned it down to the ground, physically and ideologically. I have a few more here. This is an interesting picture. I have a few things to say about this picture. This is Sting's band, the Blue Turtles, who I actually saw live with this version of the band. And here we have Sting, and Branford Marsalis is like sitting on his knee. I love Branford Marsalis, by the way. He's very funny. Very, very funny. Omar Hakim, who would later go on to, he actually came out of Weather Report. This is Daryl Jones, who would go on to become the bass player for the Rolling Stones, replacing Bill Wyman, and the late, great Kenny Kirkland, who's a fantastic piano player. And it's an interesting setup. I mean, Sting hired these guys. It's not quite on the same level as like Tower of Power or Santana. But again, is this happening now? Or is this what we're talking about now? Do we even have bands? Do we even have concerts? And I'm not lamenting. I'm just giving you, I'm like right now playing, I'm an archivist right now. I'm an archivist. All right, let me show you one more very interesting photo. And now I got to get out of here. This one blows my mind. I love this photo. This is Porter Wagner and James Brown. And I love Porter Wagner. I like to watch his TV show on YouTube. Very generous spirit. Porter Wagner is a Leo. Can you tell? Porter Wagner brought James Brown to the Grand Ole Opry. Okay. That was the world we were living in. He like brought James, and trust me, people at the Grand Ole Opry, they weren't happy about that shit. And the reason why they weren't happy about it is because most of the Grand Ole Opry shows were mostly acoustic. Okay. At least that's what they said. Maybe they probably just didn't want James Brown there. But he also brought Joni Mitchell to the Grand Ole Opry. Porter Wagoner was kind of an amazing character, actually. All right, that's the last image I have. What do you guys think? I met James Brown at Virginia Airport when I was young. James Brown's an interesting character. He's a very interesting character. Let's just say James Brown was very pro-America. He was very pro-America. He was pro-Richard Nixon. He was a Republican to the core. Let's see. Who else do we have? What else do we have here? In the Depression, my mom lived as a child in a converted chicken coop in Laurel Canyon. How about that? Yep. Spent an evening this week with Jefferson Airplane. A few from Hot Tuna are still making music. Jack Cassidy from Hot Tuna was in a band called SVT. It was this punk rock band. They were fantastic live. An amazing band. I was on a Southwest Airlines flight with Jack Cassidy. He was on the same. Jack Cassidy and Maxine Waters was on the same. They were on the same plane that I was on, going from the Bay Area to LA. How weird was that? Apollonia. You're talking about Prince. Yeah. Here we go. I was going to throw TV on the Radio on there. That's another really interesting band. And again, there's this kind of unification. People are just making music, being creative, experiencing, brotherhood, sisterhood, unity. And, now it's like the cries, the cries of the cancel culture. And on the other hand, the other flank of coronavirus doesn't even allow this. Like, you can't even have a band now. Could you imagine a band called the Mask Band and all they do is just play with their masks on? I can quite easily, actually. Was Lovers with Prince? Oh, we're talking about Apollonia? Oh, yeah. What else? When do you think it all changed, Rodney King? No, I don't think the Rodney King thing changed. I think it all changed under Obama. It changed under Obama. That's when race relations, unfortunately, were radicalized and weaponized. That's when things began to change. And that was unfortunate. And I talked about this before. There was a so-called Black astrological community that was very active on Facebook. And I was tight with those people. I was tight with them. And shout out to Kair Love, whatever you're doing. Shout out to you. Raku, the Cosmo physician. Shout out to you. Brilliant astrologer, by the way. Raku's an amazing astrologer. Sister Myra. I was on their shows. They were on my show. It was a cool time. Kair and I used to Skype a lot and talk a lot. We would get on Skype. We talk for hours. And then, the Trayvon Martin thing hits. And then the Michael Brown thing hit. And by that time, it was really bad. It got really just completely atomized and polarized. And I was watching these conversations go off on Facebook and going, this is really troubling. And these are people that I was connected with. I could not reach them. I couldn't say, watch out, man. Watch out. You're being manipulated here. You're being played. They didn't, some people were okay with it. Some people were okay with it. A lot of them weren't, though. A lot of them weren't. There's a guy by the name of, maybe I'll bring up his stuff tomorrow. So anyway, there you go. There's a trip down memory lane. This is the way it was. For those of you who are young, you have no idea about what that's like. I gave you snapshots. I gave you photos of a time where we lived together, we worked together, we partied together, we played music together, we experienced the music together. We had separate lives and separate communities. That much is true. But it's a lot different picture that we're being shown today. That part of history is being removed as we speak. By the way, very hard for me to find photos of Miles Davis live. Very hard for me to find photos of Prince and the Revolution in their kind of full totality. I spent a while doing that. All right, I'm out of here. Okay. All right. We got Eric Karlstrom tomorrow on the Friday Forecast. If you've been gang stalked or targeted, you're going to want to tune in, right? You want to tune in for that because we're going to be going down the rabbit hole. Put your coal miner's hat on because we're going to go deep. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. Do yourself a favor, find some of that music, play it. Keep the spirit alive. I was playing Sly and the Family Stone this morning. Keep that spirit alive. And remember, you can make it if you try. I'll see you tomorrow.